could never keep me down. Oh, you were wrong, 'cause that was then and this is now. Take aim, come on and give it down. These flames are really pushing me higher. I'm crazy 'cause you know that I'm wrong. They tamed and now I'm walking on fire.
What's up, Mooch Crew? It's Alan Mooch here. Welcome back to another Alan Mooch video, and I have something to say. The greatest day in motorsports is back after a one-year hiatus, and with a lighter load than what we had in 2019. The race that was dropped, the Monaco Grand Prix. And to that I say goodbye and good riddance. Yeah, you can tell I don't think highly of the Formula One Monaco Grand Prix on the Sunday before Memorial Day. Well, Formula One agreed with me, and they decided to move it off the greatest day in motorsports. So now we can all wake up on Sunday and start gearing up for the real start of the greatest day in motorsports, the Indianapolis 500. But with that empty morning time slot and race fans probably wanting something to watch racing related, I have an idea. How about we have the IMSA cars race at Lime Rock in the morning? That way, you can have that race on the main NBC channel, and you can have coverage run up until 11, and then you can go to Indianapolis for the pre-race coverage of that race, and then go on to the Indianapolis 500 itself, which is a great idea, but I don't think it'll happen, because, honestly, I think IMSA is probably a little timid about pitching this idea to NBC, and even if they did, NBC probably wouldn't go along with it, but that's not a conversation that I should be having. So anyway, last year's edition of The Greatest Day in Racing did not happen for reasons I will not explain. The reason has been beaten into the ground by everyone, and I'm not going to continue to beat the dead horse. But this year, it feels like I'm back home again. Back home again in Indiana. So let's talk about the Indianapolis 500. Before we get into the 2021 edition of the preview of the 2021 edition, I want to talk about how the 2020 event unfolded, which took place on August 23rd, 2020. Because of the extreme summer heat that Indiana gets in August, the race was to go green at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, as opposed to the traditional Indy 500 start time of 11 a.m. or noon Eastern. It bombed in the ratings because of that time change, but that's not a here and now argument, nor is that my fight to battle, nor is that my battle to fight. That is more of David Land's area of expertise. I'm just here to talk about the racing. So the green flag would fly with Marco Andretti on the pole position, driving his number 98 Andretti Autosport Honda, but his lead would not last one turn before he lost it to Scott Dixon. Scott Dixon would take the lead on lap, and basically, Andretti's day would not get any better. He did not DNF. He did not wreck out of the event, which is good for him, but it still wasn't going to be a good day after that. He didn't even lead a single lap. Anyway, Andretti would be shuffled back to third after the opening lap, and then on lap 6, the first caution would come out when Australian driver James Davison, driving for Rick Ware Racing in their number 51 car. Yes, Rick Ware Racing is an Indy car, much to my irate. The car would just burst into flames with a brake failure. So that would bring out the first caution of the day. So then Dixon would lead the field back to the green flag on lap 12, where he would be chased by Takuma Sato, Ryan Hunter-Reay, Alexander Rossi, and James Hinchcliffe, rounding out the top 5. So those 4 drivers behind Scott Dixon. Dixon would go into turn 1 with the lead, and then he would continue to lead, and then we would get to lap 13. Well, more like we would get to lap 25 after a 13-lap green flag run when Marcus Ericsson would get loose, wash up the racetrack, and slam into the turn 2 outside wall, ending his day early because the right side of his number 8 Chip Ganassi Honda was damaged beyond all repair. So cars would come down pit road. Basically, everyone would come down to pit road except for a few drivers. One, the rookie Oliver Askew, and we'll talk about him later, the 2018 winner of Will Power, and the 2019 winner of Simon Pagenaud. Askew would lead the field to the green flag on lap 31, leading 4 laps under the caution, by the way. And then Pagenaud would blast right by Oliver Askew going into turn 1, and Pagenaud would take off with the lead. Then Pagenaud, Power, and Askew would all pit on lap 46, and they would be shuffled to the back. And then another round of green flag pits would begin again later on in the race. But on lap 63, Alexander Rossi was given orders by his team to come down pit road. Well, too late for that. He missed the pit road entrance and had to take another lap around, which would give Oliver Askew second place at the time. So the green flag run would continue until lap 86 when Dalton Kellett botched up an attempt to pass Ben Hanley. Kellett, according to the NBC broadcast team, and I watched this race last year, so I remember this. They said that Kellett was hoping that Hanley would give him the outside lane, but instead he would catch the dirty air from Hanley's car, slide wide, and then slam into the turn 3 outside wall, and Dalton's day would end right there. So that was caution number 3. The fourth caution on the day was the second horrifying accident. Remember, the first one was lap 6 when James Davison's car burst into flames. Anyway, that would occur on the lap 91 restart. Connor Daly would have his car snap out from underneath him on the inside of turn 4. Oliver Askew would spin out somehow, slam into the inside wall, coming off of 4. Then he would, as he was sliding back onto the racetrack, Connor Daly's 47 car is headed towards the inside wall. The two cars make contact, and their days would end on lap 91. Askew would suffer from a concussion, and he would be forced to sit out for a few races after that, and then he was ultimately cut from SMP Racing, and I'm still not happy with SMP Racing for removing from my favorite driver. Like, come on, why are all the drivers that I like are the ones that get screwed over? Anyway, tangent aside, the green flag would fly again on lap 101 with Scott Dixon leading over Takuma Sato, and Alexander Rossi would blast by Sato for second on the restart, and then he would blast by Scott Dixon for the lead on lap 103. So the caution would fly again 18 laps later on lap 121 when Spanish rookie driver Alex Palou, driving the 55 Honda for, I believe, was it Meyershank? I think it was. I can't remember which team it was, but I know it was the 55 Honda car. He would crash in turn 1 and have his stellar Indy 500 run come to a premature end. So everyone comes down pit road under the caution period, and cars are leaving pit road, and then there's contact between Alexander Rossi and Takuma Sato, and Rossi would be penalized for unsafe release. At least his 2017 would be penalized for unsafe release. While that's going on behind Scott Dixon, who gets off the pit lane first and would be relegated to second because Felix Rosenqvist stayed out. So, Felix Rosenqvist would lead over Scott Dixon and IndyCar rookie sensation from Mexico, Patricio O'Ward, also known as Pato O'Ward. O'Ward would lose third to Graham Rahal headed to turn 1. Out in front, Rosenqvist's lead was short-lived as Scott Dixon would blast by his Ganassi teammate to reclaim the lead. While all that's going on in the front of the field, Alexander Rossi is like on a kamikaze mission, basically. So Rossi starts making these crazy bonsai moves and basically I say kamikaze because any move that he made there could have been his last. To my surprise, they were not. He would settle into 17th place until his number 27 Andretti Autosport Honda would snap loose underneath him in turn 2, and he would wash up the racetrack, slam into the outside wall hard, and Rossi's day would come to a decisive end on lap 144, bringing out the 6th caution of the race. The green flag would fly again on lap 155, with Scott Dixon leading over Takuma Sato. But the Honda drivers would have a new challenger in the form of the defending IndyCar champion, Joseph Newgarden, who was driving a Penske Chevrolet with the number 1 on the nose. Or it was actually adorned with the number 1 entirely. Anyway. And then they would be challenged by Sato's teammate Graham Rahal. Newgarden would work his way up to third and be a true challenger to Sato and Dixon. And then Sato would pass Dixon for the lead on lap 158 and would only relinquish the lead on a green flag pit cycle that began when Sato pitted on lap 167. When Sato pitted, the lead would go back to Scott Dixon on lap 168. And then Scott Dixon would pit on lap 169. When Dixon pitted, the lead was given to Santino Ferrucci, who pitted on lap 170. But of course, we can't talk about the pit cycle without having an issue. Without talking about that issue that the 9 team had, where they had a slow stop, and then that allowed Sato to get ahead of Scott Dixon and take third away from the legendary New Zealand driver. So Ferrucci pits on lap 170, and the lead goes to James Hinchcliffe, who would pit on lap 171. And then the lead would go to Zach Veach, who would lead from lap 171 all the way to lap 184, when Veach brings the 26 Andretti Autosport Honda down to pit road for their final stop of the day, and the lead goes back to Takuma Sato on lap 185. So the stage is set for another fantastic Indy 500 finish. Ooh, Dixon versus Sato. Who's going to win this one? So Scott Dixon's trying to pass Takuma Sato. He's hanging with him. He can see him and he can catch him. But passing is another story because of the spec race, the spec cars that IndyCar has. Anyway, the final caution would come out on lap 195 when Spencer Pigot, driving the number 45 Chevrolet, would lose control of his car in turn 4. He would just brush the outside wall softly, just so it was a light brush. Then he slides down the racetrack, careening into the pit wall. After he hits the pit wall, the car was violently hurled back onto the racetrack, where it would come to a rest in the outside lane. The race would not go back to green flag racing. Thank God. So as the field rolled out of turn 4 for the final time, Takuma Sato would win his second Indianapolis 500. Scott Dixon would finish second, and Takuma Sato's teammate Graham Rahal would round out the podium for the 104th running of the Indianapolis 500. This year's Indy 500 is the 105th running of the prestigious event, and there are many storylines going into the event this year. Scott Dixon, now a 6-time IndyCar champion, is aiming for racing immortality as he goes for his unprecedented 7th IndyCar title. If he does win this title, he will be joining elite company of Lewis Hamilton in Formula 1, Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, and Jimmy Johnson in NASCAR, and AJ Foyt in IndyCar as the only 7-time champions in motorsports ever. On top of that, Scott Dixon is also 16 wins behind AJ Foyt on the all-time IndyCar's win list. AJ Foyt has 67, and Scott Dixon actually has 51 as of the 2021 Indianapolis Grand Prix. You're welcome. And if that's not enough for you all, Scott Dixon has his 4th ever pole position starting spot for the Indy 500, having won it before in 2008, 2015, and 2017. Of course, he had to work for it, as Colton Herta was only 0.003 miles per hour faster. Yes, you heard that right. 3 1,000ths of a mile per hour separated Herta and Dixon for the pole. But there's more storylines than where that came from, because aside from Dixon winning the pole, history was made on Bump Day as the 16 Parada Autosport Chevrolet, the first ever mostly or all-female team. I believe it's all, but I've heard it's mostly as well, so if you guys want to correct me, go right ahead in the comment section. Anyway, history has been written there as it's an all-female team, the first ever all-female team to compete in the Indy 500. They had to bump their way into the field, and they did it. They will start 33rd on the grid, with Swiss driver Simona Di Silvestro putting the 16 car on the grid, knocking out Dalton Kellett and Charlie Kimball in the process. And here's more fun facts for you. We have an outstanding field of 33 drivers, with nine past Indy 500 drivers nine past Indy 500 winners in this field at 33. Any one of these drivers have a shot to win, but you cannot count out the rookie drivers. You cannot count out the veteran drivers who are personal heavy favorites to win the all, like Ed Carpenter. He's a favorite. Takuma Sato's going for back-to-back Indy 500 wins. You got Rennis VK, who's coming off of his Indy Grand Prix win. You got Santino Ferrucci. You got Zach Veach, I believe, is in there. Alexander Rossi, perennial Indy 500 favorite. Simon Pagenaud, he's up there. Honestly, any one of these 33 drivers have a shot to win this race, but I think Scott Dixon will win this race and get revenge. No, he won't get revenge, but he will redeem himself for the Indy 500 that he lost last year. But it's not going to be easy. Yes, he is going to dominate. Yes, he's going to lead the most laps. But no, he's not going to get it as easy as everyone's making it out to be. Oh, just give it to Scott Dixon. No. He's going to be challenged by Colton Herta. He's going to be challenged by Rossi, Sato, Ray Hall, Carpenter, VK. Everybody in this field is going to give him some form of a challenge. And I cannot wait to see how this year's race unfolds. But I still think Scott Dixon is going to win this race, and the number 9 Chip Ganassi Honda team will get the job done and lift their second Borg Warner trophy in celebration. From the greatest spectacle in racing with the Indianapolis 500 to the longest event on the NASCAR schedule, the Coca-Cola 600 is a demanding 400 laps, 600 miles around the 1.5 mile Charlotte Motor Speedway located in Concord, North Carolina. In the Gen 6 era, which started in 2013, the race has usually been spotlighted by beautiful American patriotic paint schemes, and this year is once again no exception. There are some absolutely beautiful American patriotic schemes in this race. But good-looking paint schemes alone do not make the Coca-Cola 600 great. It is the on-track product itself that makes the race. I said 2019's edition of the Coca-Cola 600 was the absolute best running since the 2011 event, and you can fight me on that all you want, but I am not backing off of that statement. And last year's race was a wash because of 3 factors. The first factor being the PJ1 track bite substance that NASCAR uses to help improve the racing in the short term. Now, ideally, if the temperatures are high up and there's blue skies and sunshine, it should work. Last year it did not because of factor number 2 being the weather. Last year's race was covered in clouds, temperatures were low, speeds were up, and there was also a third factor in play with the controversial 550 horsepower package, a package that fans absolutely despise and has been beaten into the ground multiple times over, so I'm not going to go off on it. If you want to know why NASCAR fans hate it, you have to go watch the 2020 Hollywood Casinos 400 from Kansas, where Joey Logano had the lead. Kevin Harvick could catch him, he just couldn't pass him is the problem. All 3 of those factors combined to make the Coca-Cola 600 we saw last year not fun to watch. But for all the hit and misses, one thing will always remain the same. The Coca-Cola 600 is always historically phenomenal. In 2016, the racing product was horrible as NASCAR decided to test a high horsepower, low downforce package where the spoiler was like so low you could barely even see it. So NASCAR tries it. Truex Jr. goes out, dominates the race, leading 398 of the 400 laps that were run that night. And it was historically amazing to see Truex pull that off because it will never happen again. It almost did in 2018, but we'll get there when we get there. So 2017, Austin Dillon wins a thrilling field mileage race where Jimmy Johnson seems to have the race in the bag. But with 2 laps to go, his 48 car runs out of fuel going into turn number 3. Austin Dillon goes to the outside, blasts by Jimmy Johnson to take the lead, leads the final 2 laps en route to his first ever NASCAR Cup Series victory. That win that Austin Dillon had that night was also the first win that we would have, was the first win for the number 3 car since Talladega in October of 2000. So welcome back to victory lane number 3. So that was pretty cool. It was cool to see that happen. And in 2018, while not as impressive as Truex Jr. leading 392 laps just 2 years prior, Kyle Busch would lead 377 of the race's 400 laps en route to his first ever Coca-Cola 600 win. At the time, it was a historic moment as Kyle Busch would become the first driver ever to win on all the active NASCAR Cup Series tracks, a feat that he would lay claim to until this year when NASCAR added Circuit of the Americas, COTA, Road America, and Nashville to the schedule. The Coca-Cola 600 win of 2018 would also put Kyle Busch a Daytona 500 win away from completing NASCAR's Grand Slam, and I'll explain what that is in just a little bit. In 2019, Truex Jr. would lead a race-high 116 laps en route to his second ever Coca-Cola 600 win, capping it off with a bonsai move with 5 laps to go where he made a 4-wide pass down the backstretch on the inside. Then he comes off turn 4, he takes the lead, nearly gets wrecked by defending champion Joey Logano. Truex hangs on, drives away, and beats Joey Logano to the stripe by 0.3 of a second. Truex, of course, winning in the number 19 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota. And I just gotta say, that 2019 event was fun. It was the best one I'd seen since 2011, and I still stand by that, as I mentioned earlier. And as mentioned before, the 2020 running was another case of the on-track product being horrible, but not because of Alex Bowman, who led a race-high 164 laps of the 405 that was run that night. The reasons that the race was boring is because of the 3 factors I had stated earlier. Like I said in the previous paragraph, Alex Bowman only led 164 of the 405 laps that were run last year. And the reason this race went to 405 laps is because Chase Elliott, he was running away with the race. He's absolutely running away with the race. He's got this lead by a country mile. Nobody's going to catch him. 2 laps to go. Chase Elliott's teammate, William Byron, spins out and brings out the final caution of the night. Chase Elliott's team goes down pit road, and it gives the lead to Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski would lead the final 2 laps to win his first ever Coca-Cola 600. And historically, it was great because that was the last time we would ever see Miller Lite in NASCAR's Cup Series victory lane. I know, sad. I believe what's going on is that Miller Lite is the Miller Brewing Company, I believe, is they are changing the product that they want to promote on the track. So like instead of it being Miller Lite, they're changing it to Keystone Light. I believe that's what's going on. I'm not entirely sure. If someone wants to correct me in the comments, they can, but I have not seen the Keystone Light car on the racetrack this year. So just throwing that out there. And much like Kyle Busch, 2 years prior, Brad Keselowski is now a Daytona 500 victory away from completing NASCAR's Grand Slam, where you have to win the Brickyard 400, Southern 500, Daytona 500, and Coca-Cola 600. A feat that has only been done by Kevin Harvick, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, and Dale Sr. Truly some very elite company there. And of course, Chase Elliott actually would finish second to Keselowski, as his teammate Jimmy Johnson, who was driving the 48 that year, would be bopped for a penalty that would actually, failing post-race inspections, that would nullify his second place finish, and then that would relegate the 48 team to a last place finish. Either way, given the pattern that we've seen recently, I think it's safe to say that the 2021 Coca-Cola 600 is going to be fantastic. But do not be surprised if it winds up being a rerun of last year. But I can say with certainty that there will be something historic. And in fact, there already is something historic, because this is actually the last race, the last Coca-Cola 600 that the Gen 6 car will race, and I'll dive a little bit more into that later. So I suppose you want to know who my pick is to win. I mean, all 4 of the Hendrick Motorsports cars are really strong, and any one of them could take it. There's also the 11 of Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin's been having a really good year, and a win could turn his whole season around. He's a good pick. Oh, there's also Truex Jr., who won 2 of the last 4 Coca-Cola 600s, so he's a good pick as well. There's also the Penske drivers of Joey Logano, who's been a threat to win, in the Coca-Cola 600 the last few years. Ryan Blaney, he finished third last year. He's a good pick. There's also Brad Keselowski, who won last year. He's the defending winner. He's a good pick. So all three Penske cars are solid picks. You also have Daniel Suarez and Trackhouse Racing being serious dark horses picks to win. But I think it's going to come down to one of two drivers. The 42 of Ross Chastain and the 17 of Chris Buescher. And let me explain why. With Ross Chastain and his Chip Ganassi Racing 42 team, the Chastain has actually gotten better as the season's gone on. And it shows in his finishes. Although I will say that he has not gotten some of the finishes that he deserves. Like, for example, you have the Darlington Throwback race where he was having a great race, and then his crew chief screwed up the strategy, and it relegated him to a 14th place finish. And then, so basically, I think Ross Chastain is a very solid pick to win. So do not be surprised if the Alva Florida native wins the race, but that would also mean hide the melons in the bunker and cover the eyes of all the innocent children. Ross Chastain's going to be smashing a watermelon when he wins. Now, alternatively, you have Chris Buescher in the number 17 Roush Fenway Racing Ford Mustang. And Buescher has actually been very, very consistent. Like, he goes out and runs and will compete for a top 10 week in, week out this year. He has been fun to watch. He has been the best Roush Fenway car on consistently this season. So, a win in the Coca-Cola 600, that would be his first win since Pocono of 2016, when he won it because a fog bank rolled in. I know, shocking. But that actually did happen. So, yeah, by that proxy alone, watch me just completely jinx the 42 and 17 teams, and then Kevin Harvick or Kyle Busch go on and win the 2021 Coca-Cola 600. Like I said, history will remember this Coca-Cola 600 as the last ever Coca-Cola 600 to race with the Gen 6 cars, because in 2022, NASCAR will be racing the brand new Gen 7 cars, aka the next gen stock car. And do you guys remember when I absolutely just gushed over the 2018 Indy cars? Yeah, it's basic. I'm just doing the same thing with the Gen 7 Cup cars because they're so good looking. But, of course, we all know that the cars don't just need to look good, they need to race good. And how the 2022 Coca-Cola 600 will play out and how good we're going to remember it, and how we're going to judge that race, it really comes down to how the Gen 7 cars are going to race at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Mark my words. If it's not good, we got a problem. And I mean a big problem. And there you have it. My full thoughts on the 2021 edition of The Greatest Day in Motorsports. What did y'all think? Who do you have winning the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Turn on that notification bell icon so that we are notified of all my videos, whatever and whenever they may be. And as always, don't forget to keep on dancing, move your feet to the beat. Hey, remember, until we rock again on the Soundwaves, I'm Alan, and I'm out of here. I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Here comes the outro. I'll break it down now.